So now we're going to identify the most appropriate method to solve each type of quadratic equation. Mainly we're going to be looking at factoring, or using the square root property, or using the quadratic formula. So if we look at A, we have x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. The first place we're always going to look is to factoring. So are there any numbers that will multiply to 8 but add to 6? Because we have a positive 8 and we have a positive 6. So what two numbers, and again, this is most appropriate. We can end up using any of these methods to solve a quadratic equation, but it's which is the most appropriate, which is the easiest. Now with this first one, again, we'll always look to factoring first, and there are two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to 6. Those would be 4 and 2. So the most appropriate method here would be factoring. It'd be x plus 2 times x plus 4 equals 0, because 4 times 2 equals 8, and 4 plus 2 equals 6. That would give us solutions of x equals -4 or x equals -2. Now if we look at part B, it's already being squared. So if something is isolated and already being squared, it would make sense to just take the square root of both sides. So we'll use the square root property, which would give us n minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 16. It negates having to multiply through, then subtract 16 from both sides and see if it would factor. When it's already being squared, whatever the variable term is already being squared, then the square root property is the easiest. To give it as n minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 16, which is plus or minus 4. So n equals -1 or n equals 7. And again, that's because variable term is isolated and being squared on one side of the equation. Now with this third one, we have 5p squared minus 6p equals 9. So the first thing we would want to do is move the constant to the left side so we have it equal to 0. Now unless we recognize that it factors right off the bat, because we have this leading coefficient of 5, it's not 1. Our first place isn't necessarily going to be looking at factoring unless we, like I said, we just recognize it. But this is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 with a leading coefficient that's not 1, it's 5. The most appropriate form is going to be the quadratic formula. And again, we would just plug that into p equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and then simplify. And again, we can use any of these methods, including completing the square eventually, to solve these quadratics. It's just which is the easiest method to use.